When we pray, we're affirming a first principle and first value of cosmos. It's not a made up pre-modern idea. It's not a cosmic vending machine. So pre-modernity got it wrong. It made it too ritualistic. God was hijacked by a particular nation or particular religion. And if you put in the right coins, you got the right results. That's not exactly right. Modernity itself got embarrassed by prayer. Kant says the modern man is embarrassed to pray. And post-modernity forgot all about it. No, prayer is actually, let's go post-modernity. We're articulating and weaving the new source code. Prayer is an expression, it's beautiful, of a first principle and first value of cosmos, actually of a cluster of first principles and first values of cosmos. And a first principle and first value means you can locate it inside. Let's see if we can get this. A first principle and first value means you locate it inside, or you go inside. We call that anthro-ontology. You go to the inward space of meaning, you get quiet in that inward space, and you access first principles and first values that live in that inward space of meaning. That's where it's anthro-ontological. It lives inside of you. Now, slow. And then you realize those first principles and first values live all across the world and in all through stages of human history. And then you realize that actually there's even earlier versions of them that live in the world of life, pre-human, and then even in the world of matter, in earlier and more fundamental forms. That these first principles and first values animate reality itself, and they evolve at each stage. So what are the first principles and first values, right? So what are they, right? First principle and first value. What's a first principle and first value? So the first one would be, this is fantastic, this is great to do together, personhood. Personhood, let's see if we can get them down, right? Prayer is based on person. What does personhood mean? It means that reality is not just third person, it's not just it's. Reality is not just first person, right? Which is my own inward experience of self, right? It's also second person. My first person meets your first person and a new space in between is formed. Okay, it's a big deal. So prayer is based on reality not just being reductive, materialist, it's. Reality is not just exteriors, reality is interior. Interiors are a first principle. And one form of interior reality is personhood, but there's a personal quality to cosmos, which means I have an experience of my own interior, which means that I can have joy and I can suffer and I can make meaning. And my interior yearns for your interior. That's personhood. Okay. And that personhood that lives between us is not just you and I. It's not just two separate selves. That personhood participates in the field of personhood. Does everyone get that? Let's see if we can get that. Let's see if we can get that sentence together, right? My personhood participates in the field of personhood. Does everyone get that? So if a human being doesn't have the experience of my interior, finding the interior of another human being, I'm devastated, right? The movie Castaway, Tom Hanks, 15 years ago, he's stuck on an island after his cargo plane, UPS, crashes. He's learned how to survive. He's mastered the elements of the island. It's beautiful, tropical. He can live there by himself forever, but he risks his life, 95% death, casts himself into a makeshift raft on the sea because there's no other human inwardness to meet his inwardness. Right? There's no other personhood to meet his personhood. Right? So that's the principle. That's a first value of personhood. And it goes all the way up and all the way down. Right? So personhood lives at the human level, and personhood evolves through all the stages of human consciousness, but there's already personhood at the level of life, right? At the world of animals. Right? There's already a dimension of interiority, and there's good argument to say that there's actually personhood even in the world of matter. That's what Alfred North Whitehead, the mathematician who wrote Principia Mathematica with Bertrand Russell, talked about the prehension, the proto-interiority that lives right in the allurements of the atomic world. So this notion of inwardness, which ultimately generates personhood, is a first principle and first value of cosmos. It's not just me. meaning my personhood participates in the personhood of the whole thing. Does everyone get that? This matters. It's personhood, right? What else? What's the other first principle and first value upon which prayer is based? My personhood's not generic. There's not just a field of generic personhood, right? It's not just that the consciousness has a personal quality. It's that I have unique personhood, right? And so Tanya, right? Tanya, there's never been Tanya ever again. There never will be Tanya. There never has been Tanya. Reality is having a uniquely personal Tanya experience. Tanya is a unique quality of intimacy that never was, is, or will be again. So Tanya has unique personhood. So it's personhood and its uniqueness, right? Right? Wow. Right? And 3, right, is the first principle of intimacy, right, that personhoods want to come together, right? That there's a movement in reality to move from separateness to integration, from alienation to integration, from, right, being apart to being part of a whole without losing my own individuality. That's the movement to intimacy. And the movement to intimacy is the movement of reality. Reality is evolution, and reality is the evolution of intimacy. And the movement of intimacy is the movement to create new shared identities, whether that's between subatomic particles or that's between human beings. You begin to notice, everyone, these are first principles and first values. So in prayer, right, I realize I'm a unique quality of intimacy that never was, is, or will be ever again. My uniqueness, therefore, is dignified. My personhood is dignified, which means that my needs are dignified. Did we get that right? Prayer affirms the dignity of personal need. And I desperately want to be held. And I want to be received, but that desperation to be held and received is not a pathology. It's a beautiful desperation. It's a sacred desperation. It's the desperation with which Rumi wrote love notes to Shams, and Shams wrote love notes back to Rumi. It's the outrageous love notes, which actually birthed reality itself. It's this desperation to actually find this holy, gorgeous desperation, right? To find, right, the shared identity. And we never exhaust that with only one person, right? Underneath and beyond any individual person, because it's never dependent on one person, there's a field of intimacy. And that field of intimacy is personal. And we call that field the infinity of intimacy. Other people call it God. But God means not that which is other or alienated from reality, right? Not a cosmic vending machine. Right? God is the aliveness of reality that is both beyond the personal in the sense of personality, but also the infinitely alive personhood of reality. And I begin to realize that personhood that lives between us participates in this larger field of personhood. And just like you can hear me talking, and I can hear you talking, I heard to Haley and I heard David, right? The infinity of intimacy can hear us talking. So when we pray, it's intimacy seeking intimacy. And it's me or you as a unique quality of intimacy, turning to the field of intimacy itself that holds us, the personal field that knows our name, and saying, oh my God, hold me, help me, love me, enter me, penetrate me, caress me. Can I tell you what I need? Can I please tell you what I desperately need? Will you hold me? Will you help me? Will you love me? That's prayer, not a dogma. Right? Not a dogma. When I first shared this notion of prayer with my friend Ken Wilber, right? Ken in his book Up from Eden categorically rejects prayer as the early writing in the integral world. And we talked about it deeply, and Ken had an open mind and an open heart. We went so deep into this, and we actually really began to understand that prayer is not a dogma. Prayer is the realization of second person. It's the realization of the first principle and first value of personhood. We actually formulated together, right, in the integral world. I was there, and Ken did a gorgeous job, right, in integral spirituality, and Thomas Keating has passed away, and Brother David Stendhal Rast, a beautiful friend and beautiful man. We formulated this notion of the 3 faces of the divine. That notion came out of these conversations and was a way of including second person, right? That God's third person, right? The force of physics, the forces of mathematics, the force of eros moving through cosmos, right? First person, right? The divinity that lives in you, as you, and through you. Tattvam ase, thou art that, you are that consciousness, right? And second person, right? Divinity, right? Reality has a first principle and first value, right? Of I and thou, right? And we love each other, the infinity of intimacy. So that's how we pray, and that's why we pray.